Good morning, everyone. My name is Trish Steele, and it's 9:25, so we're going to get started with our breakout session for determining your economic impact for your event. I'd like to welcome everybody today. Certainly thank MFEA for inviting me to chat with you this morning about what we've learned about economic impact. For those of you who are not familiar with myself or the activity here at the Midland Fairgrounds, I do serve as the manager and have been here about 7 years. And I also serve as the board member of the Michigan Association of Fairs and Exhibitions. And this data was collected in 2018 and 2019. And I'm pleased to be able to share it with you. I think it's certainly relevant regardless of whether you are a facility, whether you are hosting a fair or a festival or a specific event or a repetitive event. As we begin to talk about the presentation, I want to be able to answer any questions that folks have, so please feel free to use the chat on the platform today, and hopefully I can navigate my way through the tech portion of that and be able to answer any questions that you do have. So as we get started today, we'll move to our first, let me see if I can get that here, move to my first slide. We want to understand, why are we even talking about economic impact? It may be that you have a bunch of data. And that's kind of the scenario that we found ourselves in here at the fairgrounds. We had years and years of data, and we talked to people in the industry, in our community, and we talked to ourselves about our importance and things that we'd like to do, our objectives. And as we did that, sometimes people would challenge the value that we're talking about. Sometimes we thought our importance and the things that we do for our community really did have a dollar figure established, and we just didn't know how to get there. So when you talk about economic impact, it helps create awareness and value, your real contribution to your community and to your industry. And when you can measure things like that, it's verified data. It certainly helps us understand how we should be collecting information, and we've changed the way that we collect data as a result of the study. We did conduct our study in early 2019. I'll talk more about how we went about that with the help of Michigan State University. But it's important to know who your customers are, how you're going to work with them, and what type of data you should be collecting in order to give a meaningful value to your efforts. And we think data is also helpful in the broader scheme for our industry and our state. And you heard Mike Sukin talk about that in his opening remarks today. It's much more of a collaboration now than it ever has been. And, you know, we're not giving away any trade secrets here. We're talking about our business, our information that we're willing to share as we plan for our future, better understand our past. And if we can help somebody along the way, we certainly think that's the right thing to do. After all, for us, being a 501c3 nonprofit, we are chartered for agricultural education. And education comes in the forms of supporting youth, amateur sports, and a lot of our colleagues in similar industries. And we want to be able to facilitate that to the best of our ability. And when we do have a credible study, it supports all of our work and our relationships, certainly with our foundations. In Midland, and I'm sure around the state, there are many foundations who provide contributions to community efforts. We want to talk with our legislative bodies, our organizations, the policymakers, and other potential donors for work that could be done here to improve our community offering. And something that's near and dear to all of us at this point is our quality of life. If we can make going to work or going to an event or hosting an event that benefits our community a better scenario for all of us, then we certainly hope that that improves your quality of life and you get recognized for that. All right, so let's move forward here. As we talk about why we need to conduct this study, they need to take place from time to time. It's not something that we're going to look at every year. Our economic advisor, Dr. Stephen Miller at Michigan State University, said about every 5 years, unless something truly changes, monumental activity, something really changes in your organization, we would take a look at our data about every 5 years. We do recognize, though, that organizations evolve. So if something were to significantly increase or significantly decrease, we may have to look at the data and make our way back to a baseline of sorts. One thing that's helped us tremendously in looking at our data, it can make your fair festival have the opportunity to make better decisions, whether it's a committee, a board of directors, any type of governing body. Use that data to your benefit. You're going to want to make sure they're informed when they make decisions. Clearly, financial data is a key component of that. And so, since we've had our study, we've gone out and talked with people about our value and our contribution to our community. I can tell you that they definitely have responded. People better understand our 501c3 nonprofit. They give us are able to give us donations and repetitively and feel comfortable with that. And that's really what we want at the end of the day. So I'll make sure that you can make good decisions with your data and they lead to opportunities to both measure and improve your value. Quite often, we learn more about our organizations, our practices, our customers, including them as key stakeholders. You have to know their position, right? We do rank our customers here for our different types of events. We hold about just over 100 events in the normal year. And those key stakeholders are allowed to give us direct feedback and be included in planning sessions. Again, because of their contributions and their stake in working with us and making us a better place. So, know who your key stakeholders are, talk with them, keep them informed. Even when the information is bad, like right now, for us, giving people updates and letting them know, that we really haven't been able to do very much, and that we're planning for our future. We hope that things get better, but first and foremost, we're doing what's required. We're staying safe, keeping our employees safe. We want to return to our status in our community and give people a great place for them to host events and to come visit and just spend their dollars because, again, we're a business. And that's something that we're, is critical to our sustainability looking forward. So let's talk about the process of the study. Economics is not something that I wake up in the morning and say, hey, we're going to talk about economics today. And the good news is that there are plenty of people who really enjoy economic analysis. So we're thankful for Dr. Stephen Miller at Michigan State University, the Center for Economic Analysis, because for a very long time he has collected data, evaluated data, certainly understands the type of venue that we are and our desire to be better. So we took a deep dive into our financial data and collected all kinds of numbers for him, 5 years worth of data for this initial evaluation. It was a compensated study and one that we feel very much helped us get ourselves in a position where we can learn from the study and repeat it in future years. The more information that we could give to the university, the better the study will end up. It creates perspective, helps you plan for the future. And whether you're just a single event, a multiple or repetitive event, recognize that in the data you'll see we had 3 components. First, we operate year-round here at the fairgrounds, so we are a business. Our fair is 1 week out of the year, and it is an entity that we have direct data for. And then we host a number of events, and those are the third piece of collective data. So I hope that that translates to whatever type of events or information that you may have. We had customer contact information, and a key part of the study is interviews and the verification of the data. Without it, people will continue to challenge where your data came from or how you're viewing it. So a great deal of the cost associated with economic impact studies is validation of the data and interviews directly with those key customers, stakeholders, so that the economist is not just taking everything that I give to them and giving it back to me. And it's important that there are different types of folks that you can work with. We did work with Michigan State University, and there are lots of universities, interns, college students. In the past, we know folks here in Midland have worked with Northwood University. These types of projects are great for different levels of the academic requirements, and people love to be able to serve the community in that way because it's meaningful. It's real data, and I think it would be better, nothing better than to have them help you in your particular area support your community in this way or your organization. And clearly, the scope of the work, we did our study in about 3 condensed months, January through March. Some studies take much longer. If the scope of work broadens and the parameters are significant, it takes a huge chunk of work to get that done. So it's not something you can just do in a short period of time necessarily, unless you had the resources and the organization to do that. So let's take a look at the study and talk about expenditures. Michigan Economic Development Corporation has the basis for allocating expenditures across a number of categories that we're all familiar with. When you have events, you have lodging in your area, restaurant and food, beverage, retail purchases, recreation, and transportation. And the data for us was calculated by whether people came to Midland for a day trip or they came for an overnight stay. If you came for a 3-day horse show, you had to stay somewhere. If you came for the music festival, you were on a day trip. And as a result, these numbers have been created from our study to demonstrate the total per visitor day expenditure. Now, the methods that economists use to create your studies can be very different. There are lots of different models and plans that will, based on the type of data, help you get to your story. Regional margin estimates by type that we just looked at on the previous slide. And the secondary impacts, the recirculation of dollars, the money that is spent here. So those are all very important methods. And you do have to work with the person helping you with your study to determine what method works best for you. How are they modeling it based on the types of data that you do have? So let's look at the categories in the study. I mentioned earlier that when we talk about the Midland Fairgrounds, we host events. We have great data from our customers who spend money here, whether it's a dog show or a horse show, a festival, a wedding, whatever the activity might be. We ourselves, Midland County Fair, information, cost, and data related to that. And then there's the fair, the specific period in time in which we have a tremendous effort to host that particular event. Now we're going to look at some of the results. This is event hosting. So when we talk about the 114 events that we host here, MSU conducted interviews with our customers to validate the data. They created a functional model to predict the number of attendees if no interview was available at plus or minus 7%. And it demonstrates to us that we have a direct impact equal to about employment of 24 people. It shows you the labor income, the total income, and our output. So when you look at just the events that we host here, it has a total effect of about $2.25 million. When you look at the cost of our operations or our business, we use two specific years of data, 2017 and 18, to generate the expenditure profiles. And sometimes the profiles clearly vary depending on your level of investment that year, any type of activity that went on. Maybe you had, in our case, in 17 in particular, we had a flood and there was damage on the grounds. We had extraordinary expenditures related to that, but that's part of the data collection and that's in there. All of our operations and maintenance expenditures are new. Each and every year they're unique break fix new expenditures. And this study counted the share of expenditures equal to the share of economic activity from non-residents. About 31% of our expenditures are related to our ability to operate the facility. And the fair, which is our most concentrated, labor-intensive, I'll call it 10 days of the year. Technically about a week getting ready for it, a week of hosting, and a week of cleanup. We looked at our visitor and vendor expenditures. We used the Yukon State Fair data to support some adjustments to that. And the data converted the number of attendees to number of parties for estimating visitor impact. So taking about 147,000 people who are measured to attend the Midland County Fair on average in a year, it equals 29,400 visitor parties. The data tab that you see there does measure again about the employment efforts of 18 people, some secondary effects, and the total effects in value of about $1.12 million for the fair itself. Now the aggregate impact, and this is what I would call the summary slide. When we're talking about giving information to a public body or talking with potential donors, sharing with our key stakeholders, there are certain messages that you're going to craft from your data, and you're going to want to be able to speak to them about that. This essentially is our results. That reporting on the conservative or the lower bounds of contribution, this summary is critical to communicating our contribution to our local economy. Again, on the lower bounds, our events bring new transactional dollars each and every year of a minimum of $3.73 million to the Midland County economy in our surrounding area. And one thing to keep in mind is that this is not, we're not counting local dollars. This is money from outside of our county coming in. We know that the number would be much greater if we were counting the local spend as well. The challenge again would be that people say, you're double dipping or you're inflating. So that was fine with us. We just went ahead and took the dollars that we could measure that came into our community, because that's a meaningful number too, right? Our local spend may fluctuate, may be cyclical, depending on people's choices, whether they come into town and turn left and go to the grocery store, or they come into town and turn right and come into the fairgrounds and spend their money there. At any rate, they're still spending their money, and but we're not measuring it in our study. We purposely counted dollars from outside of our county coming into our county and the direct impact that had. So when we talk about things that what we learned, we know that we need to continue to collect data. We talk with our customers, but now we talk about a lot more things. We talk about data in past data, future data, and try to find smarter, easier, more efficient ways to collect that data so it's not burdensome on anybody. We don't want that to be burdensome, but sometimes we'd ask questions and they go, well, it's none of your business, or why do you need to know that? Well, if they understand what we're doing, I think customers are far more likely to give you the information that you're looking for. And I know that our key stakeholders are interested parties, the people that we have meaningful relationships with, when we share those findings, they remember that, right? I now see people in our community citing the fairgrounds as the #1, destination for events where people are coming to Midland, or they say, they have an impact that's equal to about 53 jobs in our local economy. Those are really meaningful statements, and it allows us to have better conversations with people in our community. And so that really was one of our goals, and we're thankful for that. It allows us to collaborate with colleges. Every time I talk to an economist or someone who's in that field, I learned something, right? And it will benefit all of us. I didn't want to be an economist, and I still don't, but I appreciate their intense look and understanding of how to tell a better story using data. So that is really an important part. And you can have ongoing relationships with your local colleges and universities. I often thought that if we had a student who wanted to learn more about our fairgrounds and help us with certain types of projects, they learn, we learn. It's great. I think we need to do more of that in our quest for education. And when we look in 5 years, when we look back and look at our major changes, clearly 2020 will be the year that I'm not sure what's going to show on the chart for the collection of data, because we had very little activity. But it's our reality. In moving forward, we'll need to make adjustments in our economic study in order to account for the things that have happened, because we've been in business for, I think this is our 83rd 2020 or 2021 will be our 83rd year consecutively hosting a county fair in our community, and we've come a long way, and I know that we'll continue to be an important part of our community, and this data certainly helps us establish and plan for the things that we want to do in future years. So, telling your story, for me, it's always been an agricultural story, right? And I always tell people, if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. So today, when we're talking about your event or your festival, your fair, whatever it may be, we all have a story to tell, and it needs to have a component of an economic impact, right? Whatever that impact is, it may not be strictly economic. We would think that there'd be a component that is economic, but if you had the ability to help others, to improve the quality of life, those things can be measured too, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help. We found a lot of folks who were interested in talking with us. Some of the constraints, though, might have been the timing. We had a very short term, only really this 90, 100-day time frame in which we needed to have this done for a particular reason. If you had a time frame for greater tolerance or implementation of your economic impact study, they would be able to get much more data and continue to work on it and refine it to tell the best stories that they could for you. We also use social media and local newspaper to feature our impact and to educate others. You may, sometimes people just think the fairgrounds is open 7 days out of the year, and that's not true. So yeah, we do operate year-round, but we provide a number of services to our community. And it's always an opportunity to share with people what's going on, and so that they're better educated and perhaps they themselves can share that with others along the way. So as we continue to look at our session here, we're glad to answer folks have. I do want you to, the takeaway would be to tell your story, economic or otherwise, or somebody else will, because I think we're certainly the best in that position to tell our story for our fairs, for our festivals, for our events, that do bring a special quality of life to any community or region in which you're operating. Okay. So are there any questions? Any in the chat box? If you can type a question in. Certainly, information is available. Anybody with specific questions, if you wanted to, you could welcome to email me, contact me here at the Midland County Fairgrounds in Midland, Michigan at any time. I welcome the discussion, or if you had, again, a very specific question that you wanted to go through, I'd be glad to share what I could with you at any time. All right, Jessica Haynes has a question. How long would you estimate an economic impact study should take in terms of gathering data, allowing time to do the research? Our parameters, Jessica, were that we had, it took us a couple of years to get a real historical look for the types of spend that customers were having here. Generally, though, if you have a QuickBooks or application or platform that you can just download routine business transactions, that was really what the university asked for, just 5 years of output from your financial offering. And studies aren't always free. We did pay for our study, and there are certainly firms that charge a great deal more than what we paid the university. But quite often, their commitment to, as a land-grant university, was to help us in any way that they could. And I know locally with our university here, they too we do some type of pro bono work and just be complimentary in the way they presented their project. So sometimes there's a cost in it, could be $2,000 to $5,000. But generally, if you had at least 2 years of data, up to 5 years of data out of your financial system, that certainly is a place to start. And then there's an awful lot of questions back and forth between you and the lead economist about how you operate, when, why, so that they better understand, who you are and what your objectives are. And then they go from there. So I answered a lot of questions I didn't think had anything to do with economic impact, but to help the university learn about our organization and our community and our region and our reach. And at the end of the day, those were all important things to help tell our story. So thank you for that question. Any other questions? Type them in the chat if you have one, or reach out to me on email at any time, and I'll be glad to answer. I wish everybody a continued successful convention. Really excited that we're able to do this online, and I'm looking forward to continuing to learn about festivals and events for the rest of the day and into tomorrow as well. All right. Well, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining me as we talked about economic impact for fairs and festivals. And again, I wish you all well. Thank you.